Okay, so before the break, we were kind of finishing up the graphic stuff that flowed a little past one module. The second game engine we're looking at, most people find it very easy to work with, very intuitive. So I didn't mind taking a little bit of the time off that, because once you see the steps on it, you'll see it's really easy to work with, and graphics are kind of important. It's not an art class, so don't need to master graphics here, but at least get some familiarity with it. So you want to play around with it, give things tries. And there's that discussion board. So if you do something you're really proud of, share it with your classmates. It's a discussion board, so you can type too. So if you have a bunch of experience with 3D modeling, please make sure you note that to your classmates. We don't want to make our classmates feel bad. We're just just sharing stuff. And if you've had a bit of experience with Blender or other 3D modeling, obviously that experience is going to show in the graphics, and it's going to look a little bit different than somebody that saw Blender for the first time on Monday, right? So, or maybe put in a note about how quickly it comes along if you do have experience with that, because it does seem overwhelming at first, but it starts to fall in place very, very, very quickly. You'll have some really nice looking things with just a little bit of practice, but it takes practice. So it's there to share. Graphics, little practice games, anything that you think came out nicely and like, oh, this would be good to share with classmates. Little tips you might have stumbled across along the way. It's just a spot to share stuff you found. So we'll jump back in here. I kind of wanted to look at a couple other things with graphics. We'll just kind of point at them. Share the screen here. I'm going to go ahead and close this and open those ones that I sent out. Sure, save that. I'm only going to delete it in a few minutes. And then here's the ones I sent out. I kind of did them in my office hours yesterday. So there's this dragon. This is kind of the same thing. I have the armature turned off because everything's in place, so I don't need to see it. But roughly the same movements. So it's looking there. Could change the starting point. Just go from 1 to 20 instead of 21 to 41. And now when it runs, get a similar walking animation. So basically what we just did, the steps were the important part. It does take a little bit of time, so trying to fit that into a classroom and still leave plenty of lab time had to go very quickly. Obviously not a perfect versions here. It's like, okay, that works. And we saw how to animate a 2D vector graphics that same way, and then use the camera here in Blender, which is currently turned off, to export that image. So I went ahead and set up a camera here on the screen. This was the file from yesterday. Again, just up in the add menu, add a camera, move it into the spot you want. Use the view active camera to see what the camera is looking at. Check all your animations and things like that. And this takes a picture. So when we do it this way, this will give us the a 2D version of that. Some people find that a lot easier because then we get that 3D modeling, which is easier to put the shapes together. We don't have to think about perspective or things like that. We build a 3D model, and then the computer handles the perspective and the angle we're looking at it and the lighting and all of that, unlike the 2D stuff. So we have an image here. I'll use this one. So we can export that as a 2D image to use in a 2D game if that's what we need. So the camera looking icon, that's what that one's supposed to be. It's supposed to look like the back of a Nikon style camera or something. If you've had like formal photography training, there's a whole lot of features here that you'll recognize for all your camera controls. One way down here is film, and there's a checkbox there for transparent. And if we're going to export a transparent this image to use in a game, we probably want a transparent background. That way we don't see the gray background from Blender showing up in our game. So we want to make sure that's checked. And then on output properties, and say the size and aspect ratio you want for the image, all that stuff. Mainly the size one, at least to start with. Get to the right size in pixels. Set where it's going to start and end. So frame 1 to 20, some sort of speed, and then can export that to a folder, which I already have. Nope, not under applications, downloads. I already have it exported. I guess I can override this. It won't hurt. Everything can be transparent and stuff. Give it the same name. Yeah, accept that. And then when you're ready, come up to render animation, and it'll go through the frames one at a time. So there's the 20 frames exported there, which were already in the folder. I'll point out them anyway, because it just overwrote the ones that I did during my office hours yesterday. But then that gives us 20 transparent images to work with as pings. Oh yes, back in Blender, there's a way to change the file format. If you want transparent, that's ping has to be a ping or a GIF. JPEGs won't handle transparency. The ping files are a good standard to work with. Then you can just come in here. Oh, did I put that in the wrong folder? I might have put that in the wrong folder. That looks like the right ones. Oh, it looks like I exported duplicates of it. So 20. I don't need 2 copies of it, so I'll delete that second one. Whoops. Uh, 13, 14, 19, 20. Oh, there's from there. There we go. Don't need 2 copies of it. So I'll just use the ones, but that's the steps for it. So just export it, make sure you're in the right ones, go into the right folder, everything, and you can change the frame start and end, which also goes with this, but you're going to want to preview it beforehand, right? So before exporting, you're probably going to look through the camera and set up your frames here and hit the run button to make sure you're exporting the right thing and all that, which that automatically transfers through to the frames being exported. So we kind of saw those steps the other day. Quick pass on the buttons there. The video from the other day has more detailed versions. That's not the only type things we can animate though. Yeah, don't need to save that. Didn't really do anything. Because for a game, we probably want more. And from the things I drew during my office hours yesterday, you can probably guess what the game is. Got a castle and a fireball. So our dragon is gonna breathe fireballs on castles to destroy them. Sort of a shooting gallery thing. It seemed like a nice, quick way to cover all the concepts. So I opened the fireball one. I didn't spend a lot of time on this. I grabbed a UV sphere and then I went in edit mode and randomly grabbed some vertexes and stretched them out backwards so that it looks like a fireball flowing through the air. But another thing that the fireball is going to do is when it leaves the dragon's mouth and flies through the air, it's going to grow, right? It's going to expand because oxygen is what actually burns. So moving through the air, that fireball is going to get bigger. So I did that animation, which also gives us sort of a restriction. When we get to the game, it's going to play through that animation once. It's not going to loop. It's just going to expand, and then when it hits the end of the animation, then the fireball is going to disappear. So we have to be that like within that range to destroy the castle is where that's going to apply in the game. But again, it needs to stretch out, scale outward. So that's a scaling thing. And you'll notice over here in the objects, there's a camera, a sphere, which is the fireball, and then a spotlight to make it nice and bright, which didn't come out as bright as I intended it to on the images, but it'll be fine for going over the steps. There's no armature here, and that's what we animated last time. So if I come over to the animation tab, there's no armature to animate. So we can also animate our skin directly. We can just animate the mesh, which if it's something like, you can see what we're animating. Our animation is the same thing. We can animate the transform. So we can animate the location of it, how it's rotated, and the scale of it. So to make it bigger, I just went to frame 1, pasted, set keyframes, hit I to put a keyframe on that mesh for first one. Then went over to the last frame I wanted, which I guess 15 here, hit scale, S to scale it and stretched it out, and then hit I for another keyframe. So that as it runs through those 15 frames, it looks like a fireball expanding as it flies through the air. Not really. They probably need to spend a little more time with the details to make it look like a fireball that expands as it flies through the air, but hopefully the basic idea of that's there. So we can do that with our meshes directly without using the without using an armature. If it's just a simple transform on the mesh, we're not moving those things around, which would be one of the things to make a fireball look better as it flies through the air. But just scaling it up, was able to do that on the mesh without doing anything else. And then again, set up the camera and did an export. So now there's 2D images of that animation. The third one, yeah, I don't need to save that. I don't think I did anything. The castle. Oh wait, that's not the castle. This is the castle. That's the export. Well, a fireball's hitting the castle. So we want our castle to end up looking destroyed. We probably won't actually use that animation in the game. We'll just use the first frame and last frame from it. We'll have the full castle here on frame 1. There's nice castle. I guess we didn't see this, this brown spot in front. If I select this, I just took a cube and very quickly stretched it out through on the buttresses at the top, so it looks like a that's not the right word, ramparts. So through the ramparts on the top, so it looks like a cat, give the impression of a castle, and then added some material. And we didn't see it the other day, but if I click on the material option, when we're in edit mode, we also have this button here that says assign. Over in object mode, our materials just apply to the whole object. But if we go in edit mode, then we can select just a certain number of faces and like all those, and assign a brown material to those, to just those faces. We didn't really see that, but that way we can distribute the colors amongst our things so that we're not stuck with just one solid color. So yeah, go in edit mode, and then you can assign the material or coloring as we start out, assign the colors to a particular face. And then this one, to really animate a finished castle, a destroyed castle would involve going in here, grabbing a bunch of these vertexes and moving things around so that it looks like all the blocks got smashed, right? The thing is, that's not transform. That's not location, rotation, and scale. So it's not one of the things at the top of our list, or one of the things animations are set up for. We can make that happen, but it takes a lot of work to make that happen. So what I did to make this look like a smashed castle is I went ahead and added an armature. Probably wouldn't call it a skeleton for a castle. And then for the keyframes, if I go over to the animation thing, the first keyframe is just the castle by itself. And then for the second keyframe, I just scaled those down and rotated them so it looked like smashed walls. And then when those things go together, it looks like the wall's getting smashed when the dragon's fireball hits it. So we're probably going to skip the animation in our thing, just use the first and last frame. Then once again, I got layout view. Once everything looks appropriate, I don't need to see the armature. Once again, bend those bones. I guess a framework would be better for a building. Yeah, so instead of a skeleton, it's a framework, and then we modify the framework and all the finished coating that is attached to that framework, the stuff like the drywall and the paint and just how it looks goes with the framework. Might be an analogy that works. Then once again, just went to the export, made sure it was transparent, and set up a size, resolution, all that, frame numbers, picked a folder for it, and exported all those frames so that we have that animation. Close this. Oh, yeah, don't say didn't change anything. So it doesn't just have to be living things. If we have things, I mentioned a boat earlier, I think I did. Mentioned a rowboat sort of object. We could use the skeletal sort of animations for the rowboat, because most of the boat stays the same, but then the paddles would get some bones in them, and then those then we can rotate those bones going back and forth to make it look like the paddles in a rowboat move. So it's not just living things. We can use that in different places. So that's the main points that I wanted to try to squeeze into about 2D and 3D graphics in the restricted amount of time we have. Does anybody have any questions about that? Do you feel like you can kind of run with that stuff now, and after a little bit of practice, start to put some models together and get the images and things?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, because alternatively, this is a programming class, and I was looking for familiarity with the tools. Artists usually enjoy what they do, so artists tend to make lots and lots and lots of things. So we can go either download for free or purchase really nice models that were already made to use in our games. Or Blender now accepts GIS data. So if you need an environment and you want a realistic environment, you can go grab one from Google Earth and bring that into Blender and make any adjustments to fit your particular needs. Or one of the announcements from last week, when we first looked at Blender, I sent out a link to this 18-minute long tutorial. It's kind of an advanced tutorial, but the guy made a Bob Ross style landscape very, very quickly, which is essentially, and he did a 3D one and just took a picture of it. But that 3D one is essentially would be perfect for a game landscaping, of the landscape of a game, the environment where we're going to walk around in. And then some other things. Hopefully we'll get to navigation meshes. Those are nice. But that's when we get to Unity. First of all, we're going to kind of look at this next game engine, one that's really easy to use, been popular for a long time, and is built up to include most of the functionality we would need. That's GameMaker. I have not used GameMaker on the Mac before, so hopefully the buttons are all in the same place. I figured instead of giving it a try this morning, I thought I'd wait till class because, well, if the buttons aren't in the same place and I have to look for them, that's what y'all are going to do when you're practicing with this, right? Be like, oh, where's that button, and go looking for it. So going over that process might be a little bit better, I thought. I'm pretty sure they're in the same spot. So I'll just have to fake looking for the buttons to cover the process. So I'm gonna create a new one, a new blank one. Oh, well, I can already tell it's different because I have more options here than otherwise. I did not notice there was templates. I haven't seen them on the PC. I'm sure they're there somewhere, but templates are great starting points. I often do that for like project proposals and progress reports and things in the classroom, because the template is a great learning tool. That, well, in the case of like the written ones, the project proposals, that piece of paper tells you what to write on it and where to write it. So it's a great learning tool. Similar thing would apply here. Those templates might be good things to kind of play around with. There's the GameMaker has their own language. It was originally written in a fairly obscure language that not many people know. So the language that they embedded in it is pretty much identical to JavaScript. If you know JavaScript, it's like JavaScript, only you're not working on the document object model from HTML 5.0 or 5.1. You just have that basic syntax of JavaScript. But the drag and drop one is what we were looking at here, so that we don't have to write our code and worry about typos and semicolons and curly braces, or like we saw in Python, white space issues. We'll just go ahead and set up a drag and drop one and let the computer write the code, because the computer can also type a lot quicker than we can. It'll take the computer half a second to write 5,000 lines of code, and then it runs it through a compiler automatically. Whereas it would take us a little bit of time to write 5,000 lines of code and find a compiler that liked everything we typed into that code. So it's nice to have the computer do that part for us. So drag and drop, and I'll call this drag and game. For lack of a better name, there's the location, and hit the let's go button. So it should look very similar. It looks like we got all these folders. And again, most of the folders are empty. We have one room that's essentially our levels. So we have one level ready to go. And this is just a file explorer. We can rename these folders, call them whatever we want. They're just suggested names. But the people that built GameMaker have been making games for 30 years, perhaps more. They've been making GameMaker for 30 years, and they probably knew a little bit about making games when they started that. So there's no need to just disregard their suggestions on good names for folders. And we can kind of start creating things. So I always like to do images first, and then once we have the images, the starting point on the images, then start making objects one at a time, testing them along the way. So we'll do that. It's already 2:50, so I don't think we'll get very far into this, just kind of a start, and hopefully see a bunch of buttons so y'all can play around with it, and then we'll finish this game on Monday. It's not a big, complicated game. Just looking at this stuff so that you have some idea of what to do with it, to mess around with in practice. And if you build anything you really like that you're proud of, there's a spot on our Ivy Learn page to share it. So we need some images. So I'm going to start with the Sprite, and that's those folders I sent out. Well, the stuff we just looked at, created in Blender and then exported as ping files for frames of an animation. So I'll right click and create a new sprite, or control click if you're having the one button back thing. So I'm gonna have a few, so probably wanted a few names for them. So each one of our animations will need its own sprite. So we'll have a dragon walk sprite and a dragon fly sprite. And I'll zoom out here. There it is. I was scrolling the wrong way. Okay, and all of these are scroll areas, so you do have to, scrolling can be a little bit funny. I keep scrolling backwards. I'm used to the PC, and the scroll wheel, when I just plug this mouse up to the Mac, goes the opposite way. So we have these buttons for editing an image, and we have an editor right here where we can draw it, or we can import an image. So if we hit the import button, we'll get this folder, which over in downloads, it's that one that I put in the announcement this morning. What did I call this? Dragon Walk. So in Dragon Walk, there's a whole bunch of pictures. So I'm just going to do the select all. There's a Mac user in here, right? What's the keyboard shortcut for select all? Is it not Command A? Nope. Shift A? Nope. Oh, I think I can do this way too. Let me try this again. Import the image, and I cannot remember the select all option. Nope, definitely not that. Oh, there we go. I can just drag. So I'm going to select all of them. Should be Control A. Wasn't there a Mac user in here? What's the keyboard shortcut I'm forgetting here? But whichever way, select all. Apparently dragging a box around them works as well. Once we select all the files and import it, as always, an import is not undoable. We're copying and pasting entire files at once. That's pretty standard in most of our software. If we import something, we have to actually delete it to get rid of it. That's kind of an across the board standard. But we got a bunch of images in here, and now we can import them all at once. We don't have to import a single image. That gets our walk animation in, and yeah, now I'm going to have it stuck in the back of my mind, trying to remember what that keyboard shortcut is, but I don't remember another way to do it. So that's our dragon walking. And organization can go a long way. So we have this big work area where we can put stuff. So you might want to try to keep things somewhat organized. Because next off, we'll need the dragon flying animation. It's kind of the same thing. Bring that up, give it a name, because we're going to have a few things. So we want to keep that straight. Dragonfly. And that'll be okay here because both of these will be applied to a dragon object, so we won't have any name conflicts. If things are going to be named similar, you might want to add underscore sprite or something. That way you don't hit naming conflicts when you create an object with the same name. So you will want to watch out for any potential naming conflicts. Where might that happen? Oh, that might happen on a castle. So when we get to the castle, I'll throw the issue of a naming conflict on there. So again, we'll import this. I know Command up goes up a folder. I do know how to do that one. Go into Dragon Game stuff and the dragonfly one, and I can just, well, oh, it's not letting me. There we go. It's so much quicker with the keyboard shortcuts, but there's so many of them on different systems. It's easy to forget them. Yes, continue. And then we can do the scroll, but you have to be careful because here the scroll is just for that image. We have scroll bars all over the place. So I'll kind of scroll that, and then a middle click and drag kind of moves pans around our view. And that brings in all the images for that flying ant. So just import them and select them all, and you can bring them in all at once. I think you can do that all one at a time as well. I didn't really check that. I'll check that on the next one. And in your work area, some organization is nice. So there's our dragon animations. And again, there's different scroll things can happen depending on where the focus is and where your mouse is and all of that. So there's some dragon sprites. Probably need a sprite for the fireball the dragon's going to throw. We'll need that eventually. So import. Let's see if I can do this one at a time. And fireball. So I bring in just the first one, and then do import. Just the second one. Should still have a. Yeah, the way this likes to zoom in, I had to actually move that in order to. Okay, yeah, so can do them one at a time as well. Edit it. I'm going to click this button, but it's a whole lot quicker to just bring them all in at once. And there's the fireball animation. Again, scroll it out, and it can just be a good idea to go ahead and take a little bit of time to put to consider organization from the beginning, because it'll show up quickly if things get unorganized and turn into kind of a messy working area. So I'll call this fireball. Scroll back out and bring in the other sprite. Create a sprite. Import from the castle. I guess I'll import all of them. And call this something like castle crumbling. Castle crumble, that'll work. And again, navigating around the work area. Control scroll wheel zooms in and out, but so does control plus and minus, the normal zoom in and out features. And clicking the scroll wheel and moving around navigates to the thing. So also if you're on just a touchpad scroll, the alt and control scroll and all the normal simulating the scroll wheel features for the touchpad. Stuff right in our animations. I guess we could look at it. Let me zoom back in there. Oh. So we're in that animation, but I think to try to keep things somewhat simple for a game, I'm just going to do a castle in good shape and a castle that's messed up. So this, once again, to express the point, there's a lot of repetitiveness when we do programming, and developing games tends to follow that, take that to the extreme. There's a lot of times we have to do this very, very similar steps over and over and over again, many, many times. So this time I'm going to import just the first image of the castle, there where everything's fine. So we have a one image sprite. So castle, again, this is going to go to a particular object called castle, so don't want any naming conflicts. I'll call it castle fine. Just some arbitrary name. And kind of work that into the organization thing going here. Lining up our sprite, trying to line up the sprites in some sort of nice organized fashion, because it grows quickly and that will make a difference eventually. Then I'll do a castle underscore destroy sprite for after the dragon smashes the castle, which will be the last one from the frame, last one from our animation. So just bringing in some images to work with. And there's a lot of controls over there. So for example, here on the castle, if we look at the collision mask, looks like it's a little bit big, so we could maybe adjust that a little bit. I'll switch that to manual and bring it in so that the fireball has to hit the castle very precisely. It's a castle, nice strong walls. The fireball won't destroy it if it's just near it. And things like that. So you want to go through and make sure that the collisions will happen in all the right spots and stuff like that. Or like similar thing for the fireball. And when we're zoomed way out, if we double click on it, it will focus in on that. So we don't have to scroll in and out every time. Here on the Mac, it's focusing too much on it. If I check where this collides at, it looks like it's way outside the fireball. And we definitely wouldn't want that to happen because it's a fireball that's going to expand as it goes through the air. So we probably don't even want the edges of that fireball to be the destructive part, right? It's that nice focus part in the middle. So again, under collision mask, for starting, import the images or draw them right here. And under collision mask, set those bounds to something reasonable for the game. So I'll stretch it out a little because this is the first frame. As we watch it, it looks like it's reasonable for the entire animation. And once again, you'll notice that thought that's already been expressed many times is, well, today, even today, several times a day, forethought and planning. Think about where you're going while you focus on the current step, because it'll make a difference, right? The current step doesn't completely stand alone. There's a lot of intermingling in game development. The parts don't really stand on their own as much as we would have in other types of programming. So there's those. That'll be enough to get us started. Oh, we need a background. I want a rolling background. We saw last week how I do the quick scratch versions. I'm just going to use that one. So we'll need an image, and I was thinking if the background rolls past, it'll be like one of the moving shooting galleries, the traditional county fair sort of game where the targets roll past. I guess the standard way to refer to that is the duck games at the county fairs, where a row of ducks roll past. That sort of game, only with a dragon and a castle instead of duck targets and a BB gun. So for our background, and give it a name to keep everything straight. Whoops, not edit. Import the image, and it'll just be one of. I'll just use that one we did last week. Which I already stuck in the storage thing, so I have to go find it. I have lots of those. You all saw how quickly they that went together when we did it, but basically just what I do for scratch images is kind of like they'll cut out of construction paper, so you have different colors, cut out the right shape and just lay them on top of each other, and then cut out the left edge, copy and paste it onto the very right edge, and that way the edges, the pixels at the edge line up to make something ongoing. Which one did we do last week? I thought it was on here. Oh, I think this is the one from we did in class. Does that look like the one we did in class the other day? Going over the steps, that way you all have access to the same one. But it's really quick and easy way to get a scratch image to get the programming together, and then you can put final drafts on later. Then images don't need to don't need the collision bounds or anything. That's in the background. All it's going to do is sit there in the background and roll past. So now that gets all the images we'll need for our game. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And over here in the File Explorer section, it looks like it just threw them out in random places. So I'm going to select all of those and drag them up to the appropriately named folder just for organization. Again, organization will go a long ways. And before we can go, we can't put images right into the room. We can only put objects into the room. So we need to create our objects. So I'm going to follow some organization here and put the dragon object next to the dragon and sprites. So I'll select the folder this time. That way it puts it in the right place. And create an object. So first off, we need to give it a name. Help keep track of it on all our lists and things. And then it needs an image. So by default, if I start typing dragon, we'll see all of them. I'll make the walk the default one. And then we can adjust to flying. So my thought is the dragon's walking along while the background rolls past to make it to simulate movement. And then we can hit a button to fly upward and then shoot a fireball down when the castle comes along at the right spot, right time. That's my basic idea for the quick pass on this, the quick example here. So we need, first thing is we need a way to switch from the walking animation to flying up above. So I'm gonna add an event. So once we have some stuff set up here, the dragon sprite, give it a name. At this point, the defaults are probably okay for the rest of them. Those tutorials for the second programming assignment will go over a bunch of what the details of what those mean. But we're very restricted in class time, so I'm gonna keep fit as much as possible into our lecture time here and still leave lots of lab time. So we'll fly with a key press. So key down, that's as soon as we tap it. And if we hold it, it only counts as one event. A key press, that's while the key is pressed. So as long as we're holding it down, that event is continuing to happen. So switching between like a walking and flying animation, we can just keep holding the key. So a key press and maybe the space bar. And that sends a connection over to another node, which is where we define what will happen when we press the space bar. And it's all drag and drop things. So we could assign variables, build up new objects, different things with instances. We'll see that in a moment. Oh, set sprite. That's what we want to do. We want to change the image we're looking at. So whenever the space bar is pressed, we will switch to the dragonfly image, which the search bar is much, much quicker here because to find that. So when we press the space bar, we'll switch to the dragon flying at the first frame of it. But if it's going to do that, well, actually, I'll go ahead and run it and show the problem. That way you'll recognize it. Because anybody have a thought of what else we might need? So pressing the space bar will make our dragon fly. So we can run a test at this point. If we go ahead and open our room, now that we have an object, we can put it in there and it should do something. So I'll bring a dragon over maybe here. We'll get it in position later, more detailed whenever we have the spots. That'll work to start. So I'll hit save and then run. And this is the first time I've run GameMaker on a Mac, so hopefully everything works appropriately and I didn't need to make any changes or anything. Well, did I make any like a silly mistake somewhere? The details of why this built failed, review the whole log about it. It looks like I have a setting off there. So I'm going to do this. I guess I will use my PC. Hopefully it won't what's that issue? Share this. So I'm going to go really, really quick to get that back up to speed. Let me make sure it's not trying to download again. 4 gigabytes. So hopefully it's not going to run me out of space again. It looks like I have a setting wrong on there, I guess, from the install. I'll have to dig around on that and check just in case I need to do it again. We'll call this part of the reiterative learning process. We see things more than once, it helps to learn them. And I'm going to go really quick, so it shouldn't take too long once GameMaker opens to get back to the point we were just at. Because yeah, my plan was to go until 340, and then however far we get, we'll pick up from there next time. So we'll get a few steps through it, and I'll just, once this loads, I'll repeat those loading the sprite steps again. So start a new one, a drag and drop project. Dragon game. Okay, so create a sprite. For dragon walking. So bring our images in first, give it a name. Import from, have these into the delete folder. And here I do know the keyboard shortcut. It's Control A. Can't remember what key I'm supposed to push on the Mac to get that same thing to happen. But that gets all our walk animation. That looks good. So scroll out, create another sprite. Create flying. Import our image. Actually, this might be good because now you can see without me talking about every single step in detail, it goes really quick. Talking about it does kind of stretch it out. That works. Zoom out. Try to organize stuff. What else do we do? Assets. Create a sprite on Firewall, which this one is going to throw an error because if we name our object the same thing, it'll give us an issue. But I'm going to wait and see that error so that you know what it looks like and how to deal with it when you see it. Okay. Position this. Then we had the castle. 3 castles, I guess. So crumbling has the whole animation. Sorry about the repeats. Yeah, I guess it's just a setting. You probably sign out of this with my MacBook, and I'll get that fixed before the next time. So I'll go ahead and import the whole animation. But since we're restricted for time, I'm not sure if we'll have time to fine tune that animation. So I'm also going to do a sprite with just the beginning and ending thing. And then we can show the full castle. So when it's fine, which will be the first image from the animation. And adjust the collision area because the fireball is going to hit this. So bring it so the collision area is like inside those nice big walls or something. That'll work. And if that collision happens, then we want a sprite ready for the destroyed castle. And that probably would be a good place to ignore those typos I just made, because nice thing about drag and drop stuff is the computer's writing all the code. So after the first time I type it, the computer's going to type it every other time. So it really doesn't matter if there's a typo in there. It's not me that's going to be making the typo over and over and over again. And the computer doesn't even know how to spell the words castle or destroy. It's just copying and pasting things. Then our background. Asset, we'll need a background. I think this is the one we did in class. That way I'm doing the same one, but I have many folders full of those things. They go together very quickly for scratch images. So as long as we have an image that will roll past in the background, you can make this look like a shooting gallery. Okay, so now once we have all our images in, we need an object. So assets. Get these pictures out of the way and select all those, put them in the right folder. You go to the objects folder and create a new object, which is kind of where we were a moment ago. Once the computer catches up. Oh, auto saving. Yeah, so if you didn't change the defaults, it will auto save after 7 minutes apparently. So look for the dragon images, and I'll make dragon walk the default, but I want the dragon to be able to fly as well. So it's going to walk along, and when a castle starts rolling, I thought as the castle will start coming in, and the dragon can jump up and then spit the fireball down to try to destroy the castle. So we want to be able to hold the key to make the dragon fly. So I'll key down only happens once. Key pressed is the whole time we're holding it down. So I'll set it for a spacebar. And then we have lots of events, lots of things that can happen to choose from. This is what you're going to want to spend some time with. Just hover over stuff and look for what the different things that can happen are. Okay, so we want to change the sprite. We'll change it to the dragon flying sprite. So save that. Zoom out. Okay, my folders don't seem to be filling up, so Windows isn't trying to update. It might even be trying to upgrade to Windows 11. There's been a message down in my taskbar for like a week saying your computer is ready to update to Windows 11. So now that we have an object, we can put it in a room. And this gets us back where we were. Oh, I didn't mean room order. We're going to look at that button next week. I'll just click this to actually get the editing. So yeah, there's a, if you didn't see what I did, might as well mention it. I clicked over here on the house icon, not the name of the file, and it brought up that little menu that allows us to change the order we pass through the rooms in, change the order of the levels. So each room is essentially a level. So then once we have this, we put instances of objects in it and our background. I'll start with the dragon one because there was a problem. Bring the dragon in. And now we're back to where we were, so hopefully it's going to run without problems. Sorry about that. 9 minutes. So at least you can, at the very least, you can see it goes much quicker when I'm not talking about every single step, right? So hopefully that'll is an indication that it's not going to take long to mess around with stuff and get something working. But eventually it's writing programs in the background, then running them through a compiler, And after it gets all the files written and compiled, and then delete the files so they're not wasting memory, not wasting space, it'll open the game. And we can see the dragon there. Starts in a walking animation. We hit spacebar, it starts flying. Then I release the spacebar, and it's still flying. So that's a bit of a problem, right? We don't want our dragon to keep flying. We want it to stop flying at some point. So notice we have tabs, so I can keep that room open and just jump back over to the workspace, which is a little bit compressed now, but we can scroll in and out and move things. So along with the key press to do that, we might also want a key up, and that's when the key is released. So when we release the space bar, we'll do the same thing, only the other sprite. And as you start doing things, it's very common that we do the same things over and over and over again. So there's a recently used thing up at the top. So the most recent instructions we put in will be at the top of the list. We don't have to go digging through looking for the common ones. So when we release the space bar, we can walk. We'll switch back to the other animation. And I guess I'll do a couple steps here. I'll go ahead and put the background in before we run a test. So remember, instances, those are our objects here in the room. We'll also want a background for our room. So we can load in a sprite, which I'll just search for that. There's that sprite we listed. It's a little small, but we have a checkbox to just stretch it out. That's much easier than typing that in code, right? That probably happened to some of y'all playing around with Pygame. Yeah, your image was the wrong size, so you had to change the image in the Pygame coding. And it takes a few runs because it takes some trial and error. We have to take a guess, see if that's right, adjust our guess, and keep going. I want this to roll, so I'll tile it horizontally. And instead of horizontal speed of maybe 4. Just to guess at a starting point, we'll see where that goes. But now I can see that the dragon is a little bit high for that background. So I'm going to, so that should be good for the background. So I'm going to switch back to the instances, the instance of our objects in the game, and I'll select the dragon and bring him down so it looks like he's walking along the ground. And since we wasted a bunch of time, I was going to run this several times. I'm going to go ahead and do the next step. I shouldn't be trying to talk super quick now and catch up speed. I'm just going to cut out the run. I'll cut out some of the runs I had in mind. The general rule of thumb for programming is run a test every chance you can get. We just passed 2 chances to run a test. When we, with our key release, could have tested that. Then the background, rolling background, tested that. So really you want to do that, run the test every chance you can. But I had to waste a bunch of space because there's apparently a configuration wrong from running that on the Mac. So I'll have to figure out what that is. And I'm going to do one other thing here. I don't want the dragon to fly on the ground, right? I want the dragon flying up here. It walks on the ground and flies in the air well above the ground. So that happens in our space. Press the space. So we want to sort of change this. We want something to happen whenever we press that key. In particular, we want to move straight up. So, I'll scroll in. Hopefully those buttons are kind of seeing it. So we can hover over things. They're categorized, so hopefully that'll help find some stuff. Like instances, that's not going to have movement. Sequences, mouse and keyboard stuff, joysticks. Oh, movement. This is one of them we want. So just start moving in a direction, start moving towards a point. This would probably be better in the long run, but we're in a hurry, so I'm going to use a different one. So start moving towards a point is, like we say, move to a point 250 pixels above where it started. It's going to start moving there at some speed. There's also a jump to a point. Where's jump to point? Here we have a jump to a point. So since we're in a hurry, we're restricted on time. We're not in a hurry. We're going to be slow and thorough and cover a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to use jump to point instead of slowly move to point. And notice it formed a connection between those things. Well, it's not letting me move it, but it put a little blue line there saying they're connected. If this was up here, notice it's going to jump to the point first and then switch our sprite. Here it's going to switch the sprite and then jump the point. So there's the sequence like you're probably used to from programming. And we can say where we're going to jump. And again, to make things nice and smooth, you probably want to move to the point, not jump to the point. But since we're restricted on time, the dragon's going to jump up in the air. And then when we release the key, he's going to jump back down. So we're not moving left or right, just going straight up. So 0 relative to our position, because we don't want the global coordinates of 0. That's the origin on the screen, right? We don't want to go all the way to 0. That's the top left corner. We want to go 0 relative to where we are. And then I'm just going to take a guess, 234 pixels relative to where the dragon was. And then we'll want to do the same thing when we release our key. Oh, wait. Make sure you're on the right one. I put that on the key up. I was talking about the key down when I said that. But when our key is released, then we want to come back down. And on this other tab, when our key is pressed, then we want to jump up. Where's this spot where I can get over to those? There we go. Oh, which should be on the recently used list. Yep. It was the last thing used, so it was right at the top of the list. So when we press the key, we'll move 0 pixels in the X direction relative to where we were, and 234 pixels. No, up is negative. Sorry. Negative 234. So that's jumping up 234 pixels relative to where we are. And then when we release the key, we'll kind of go the other way. Positive 234 is down. Sorry, the MacBook not wanting to cooperate through my, got my mind all distracted. But does that make sense? So we'll start with the walking animation. When we push the space bar, our dragon will start doing the animated animation, the flying animation, and move 234 pixels up, which might be the right amount, might not. We'll run it and see what that looks like. And then when we release the space bar, it'll drop back to where it was and switch back to the walking animation. So I'll hit save and run that. Which, once again, it deleted the text files that it already wrote, so it has to write new text files and run them through a compiler. So it is actually writing the code in the background and then deleting it afterwards. And I was hoping to wrap up about 340, but I want to at least have the dragon spit a fireball. So it might be closer to 350 from that repeat. It's all jumpy from the Zoom call, so it's kind of hard to tell now if our numbers are going to work or not, right? But I think you all can handle it. You all will be fine with that part without an example, right? It's like, okay, it's rolling too fast, so I need to set the horizontal speed slower or faster or whatever's appropriate. When I push the space bar, jumps up, goes to the flying animation, which again, if we weren't restricted for time like a classroom, that move to that point would be better than just jumping to that point. But we're restricted for time, so I'm just going to jump. And when we release it, it's back to the ground walking. And then we can just close out of this. Does anybody have any questions at this point? You see how the structure here should be somewhat intuitive. Obviously, you're probably still going to want to mess around with it a little. And well, I was trying to organize that in the layout, and I don't want to click and drag. There we go. Drag that so the dragon object lines up with the dragon sprites. And organization goes a long way. So before we wrap up for today, I want to go ahead and make the dragon create the firewall. Just to get a second pass at this. And then we'll finish this up on Monday to kind of see the different things. So once again, we have our sprite. So we need an object. I'll click the objects folder to make sure it goes to the right place, organization-wise, because that is very beneficial. Your game is going to have a lot of things in it very, very quickly. Small games end up with still have lots of things in them. Game development can be somewhat time consuming. So this is going to be Firewall. And notice this is that issue. I already called something Fireball. So we can't call it the same thing as the sprite. So we could change the sprite or give this a different name. I'll call it Dragonfire. But that when you see that message, that just has to do with we can't use the same name twice. It's probably best to add little add extra little things to the sprite, because we'll load different sprites into the same object, like we just did for the dragon. But as long as they're different names, it'll be fine. So I'll look for that Fireball sprite. The defaults are probably okay here. And what I want to happen is whenever that sprite is created, since our game's rolling this way, the castle is going to be coming from this way, so the fireball needs to go down at an angle like that. So I'll go ahead and set that for as soon as it happens. So we have lots of different types of events. We'd have a create event, which that's what we want. When it's destroyed, every step of the game, alarms are like timers. When things happen with drawing, mouse clicks, keyboard events, gestures on the screens, collisions, that's the interactions. When, well, we don't have a castle object yet, but when our fireball object collides with the castle, we're definitely going to want that one. Other stuff, these can be important. When it leaves the room, animation in, we'll want that here in just a second as well. But we want that fireball leaving the dragon's mouth to start moving immediately. So that's on create. When it's created, we want something to happen. And what we want to happen is movement, which we have here. If I drag that in, we can set it going downward. So that'll get us moving in the right direction, except how fast. It's programming. We have to spell out every single step for the computer, even if we're dragging interfaces around. So we will need to scroll down here. Again, you're going to want to just spend some time looking at different things, sequences, game movement. So before we start moving, we're going to want to set a speed. That probably needs to move fast. I'll try 8. Again, just guessing a starting point. Okay, move at a speed of 8. We'll see what that looks like. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But we don't want that to go indefinitely, right? You remember the animation for the fireball is it just stretches out, it spreads out. So before long, that fire would kind of dissipate and not be destructive anymore. So to simulate that in the game, I'm going to add another event here. So when it's created, it just starts moving down at this speed, which may or may not be a good speed. We'll check it and adjust it, which the adjustments are kind of hard on a Zoom call. Much easier to adjust when they're not like that. And after we run one pass through the animation loop, then we're done. We don't want to loop. We just want one pass of that animation. So in our other events, there's something to do at the end of the animation. And what I want to do this time is get rid of the fireball. So instances, that refers to our objects. And you'll see one of the little trash can thing here to destroy an instance. We drag that in. And as I try to click on things, you'll notice that I have to go looking around. So that basic one is itself. If with no other options, it's going to, once it hits the end of the animation, it's going to delete itself. So that'll be how much time we have to shoot the castle. So 2 events, create the event on our create event that fireball starts moving. When it hits the last frame of the animation, which is only 15 frames long, so it's going to happen pretty quick, that fireball is going to delete itself from RAM. So that's sort of our targeting time in order to hit the castle, but I don't think we'll get to the castle part today. And the other thing we need to do is we need to launch the fireball. And it's really our dragon that decides when that fireball launches. Right? So I'm going to come up here and add another keyboard event. Well, I'll put it on the key press. Put it on enter. So using space and enter keys, you might want to use a mouse button or something. And the thing I wanted to point at is here under instances, there's an option to create an instance. So that's what we want to do. When the enter key is pressed, we want to create an instance of our fireball object or the dragon fire object. Not at the corner of the screen. We want it relative to our dragon, but we'll have to run that and see where that creates it and make adjustments, because I'm guessing the dragon's mouth isn't at 0, 0 on that pixel, on that picture. It wasn't anywhere near any of our corners, so definitely can't be 0, 0. But we'll adjust that in a moment. But we probably don't always want that to happen, right? Well, actually, let's run that once. There's only going to be one more step after this. So we'll do a run, adjust the numbers, and fix a spamming issue. Might as well see the spamming issue. Which will involve a selection structure. That's why I wanted to get at least this far. My video looks jumpy. I hope you can still hear me. Almost built. There we go. So Dragon can immediately switch between flying and falling. Oh, it's just a delay. Okay, yeah, it's running really slow. When I'm flying, I hit the enter key, and it looks like the fireball start needs to come over and down. And it doesn't make it all the way to the ground. So it probably needs to go a little bit faster. So Much easier to adjust those afterwards, but I'm just going to take a guess here. Let's say I'll come over 30 and down 30. And that's kind of hard to adjust on the Zoom call because everything's all jumpy, right? If there's not stuff slowing down from a Zoom call, that should come together a little bit better. Maybe it's GameMaker slowing things down when it's building stuff. Might need to close and redo that. Because it was an awful lot for an update. But GameMaker is writing files as it does this. So it might not have deleted them yet. So you might want to keep an eye on that if you're running low on storage space on the computer, like I am on this one. Or plug up a flash drive that has lots and lots of space on it. So I got that. It also looked like that Firewall wasn't quite reaching the ground. So just the normal debugging things, right? Just make little adjustments. So if it couldn't reach the ground, the problem is it didn't have enough time. So if it went faster, it would probably reach the ground. So I'll try 12. Just kind of trying numbers, trial and error thing. We've seen that, right? We pick a starting point, see where that starting point lands us, and then we'll adjust it. But another thing that was probably hard to see there is I was able to spam the fireballs. We probably don't want that either. Right? We don't want to just have our dragon flying up in the air and just spamming fireballs as quick as the game can spit them out, because then it's definitely going to hit every target. So we want those to happen one at a time. So we'll need maybe some sort of selection structure in here. And that, there's a couple points. And this is what you're going to do. Just hover over things till you find stuff. Notice the reds seem to be creating things and destroying things, changing things. The blues are setting and getters and setters. So like adjust the value. So that's like assigning something to a variable. So a red is a big change, like create it or destroy it. And a blue is a little change, like change the whatever variable is, whatever's loaded into the Sprite variable, change that to a different one. So get and set those. And then the greens are our selections. So in this case, the if existent instance exists. So that's what we probably want for a fireball, because we only want that fireball to launch if there's not one already. And that way the player can't just spam stuff. So if instance exists, we will check to see if there's a dragon fire object there, and we want not. So if there's not one, then we want to do this stuff. And you have to watch these lines carefully. So the blue line, that's sequence. So that's our overall sequence. So it's going to do the check. And after everything with the checks done, then it goes on to the next step. But we want this to be the next step. So it doesn't seem the best color, but you might see there that the word empty is wrote. That's what happens when this is true, we just drag our stuff on top of it. Notice how it like highlighted, like it's ready to accept it. Oh, that wasn't the right thing. Maybe it's over here. Oh, yeah, and drag it to the side one. So the top one just moved this first. The bottom moves this afterwards. So when it's over on the side, now we have a green connection between them. Sorry, my video froze up for a second. I hope you can still hear me. So drag the little event box or node over to the side and get that green connection for everything you want to happen if that's a true condition. So that way, the firewall only exists if there's not one on the screen. It's only going to run for the length of time of that animation. And hopefully it'll go far enough this time to reach the ground. So I'm going to hit save and give this a run. Does anybody have any questions about this so far? Hopefully it looks familiar from the stuff we did in Pygame and from what you know from other programming, our selection structures, our assignments, create and delete things, create the things when we need them, delete them when we're finished with them, things that you know for programming, reassign values, like changing the sprite is kind of a reassigning that variable for the object. So it's running very slow. If I hit the space bar, it flies, and hit enter. It eventually creates that. Okay, that looks like it went far enough to hit a castle that time. Keep hitting enter. I'll get another one until the first one's gone. So that spam issue seems to be fixed. And yeah, looks like it's going far enough. As long as we put the castle in the right spot, it should be able to hit them. And the dragon will walk along. And I guess if the dragon walks into a castle, that'll be blocked. That will take health away or something. And if the dragon launches in the air and shoots the fireball down just the right angle to hit the castle as it's zipping past, that'll add to the score. But some of that's going to have to wait till Monday, right? That's what I had in mind. You have the objects. If you hover, as you hover over stuff in GameMaker, we see it tells you what it does. If I close this, maybe the video will move faster. So we'll finish it up Monday, but give it a try. See if you can figure out what is needed to make the castles start moving across the screen and get destroyed when a fireball hits them. That might be a good little weekend project to get some practice at this. So the drag and drop ones, GameMaker is very popular because it's a great place to apply logic and see how the logic goes together to fit our game. The software writes all the code, so all we have to worry about is our algorithms. And it's drag and drop. There's hints, the hover hints on everything. So we just put our mouse above something, and in a half a second, a little box will pop up telling us what it is. So it does take a little bit of practice, just like with the graphics. Play around with stuff, see what you can do. If you do something you're proud of, there's a discussion board just for sharing it with your classmates. Show them what you did. If you've done this stuff before and do something advanced, please make sure and make a note of that if you share it on the discussion board. That way people that are brand new won't feel as overwhelmed, because it is overwhelming. There's a lot here, and I'm going through it very, very quickly because we're very restricted on time. I want to make sure there's time to practice it. So for the next hour, I will be sitting here by the computer ready to answer questions. As always, Ivy Learn messages and text messages make noise on my phone, and I can jump back on the Zoom call in a split-second time. Otherwise, does anybody have any questions about the stuff from today? I assume that means no questions. Sorry about the issue with running that on another computer. I hadn't tried GameMaker there, so I think there's a it's just a setting issue in the MacBook I have to adjust. On the Mac I have to adjust. I'll get that over the weekend, and then that won't be a problem again. But otherwise, you all have a great weekend. Let me know if you have any questions. Just right now is the time I know I'll be sitting here waiting to answer questions, and I will see you all on Monday.
You have a good one, Chris.
See ya.
Have a good day and a wonderful weekend, Chris.
Oh,
Talk
you
to you
too.
on Monday.
See ya.